This is the Game Changers Experience. Deep dive conversations with leading business disruptors, Olympic athletes, celebrities, entrepreneurs, and influencers from around the world. This show will teach you insights about the winning principles in mindset, productivity, marketing, branding, entrepreneurship, business strategy, and more. Hosted by productivity authority, business strategist, former elite athlete, author, and public speaker, Adam Strong.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Game Changers Experience with myself, Adam Strong. And today we had another great guest here on the show. And what's really interesting about today's guest is it was actually introduced to me through a good friend of mine, David Waldy. And you'll probably know David from, we did an episode with David about a few weeks back, actually. And he introduced me to Rachael. And, it's interesting. We've had some great conversations offline. And, when you meet someone, you think to yourself, wow, you've got this like great energy, and there's just like so much great, not just energy, but like you're on such a level. It's like, wow, this is just like it feels like we've known each other for years. But anyway, I digress. So who is Rachael? And what are we going to be talking about today? We're going to be talking a lot about happiness and leadership and how they kind of like coincide together. So who is our guest for today? So her name is Rachael Clarke. Rachael is a business consultant. She is a high sport performance coach, and she's a trainer as well. She consults with multi-billion dollar organizations. She is also the vice president of the Professional Speakers Association, by the way. She failed to say that, but I did my due diligence, of course. And she's a keynote speaker as well. Now, some of the things that we're going to be talking about today, ladies and gents, is we're going to be talking a little bit about happiness more specifically, because happiness can mean so many different things to so many different people. So we're going to get a clear definition of what that is and how it can be applied in the business world or in the entrepreneurial world. So we're going to be talking a little bit about that. We're going to also talk about dispelling the common myths around what leaders think what happiness is, because and like what we need to focus on in terms of shifts, in terms of improving cultures within businesses, and also coincide that with happiness as well. So what are the key elements behind that? We're going to be talking a lot about some of the key mistakes that leaders make with regard to thinking, okay, what is that we need to do to improve performance within a culture, but also how can we be better leaders, right? So that's what the theme about today is. And also, how do we deal with the pressures of being a leader as well, which I think, if you're running an organization, you've got responsibilities, you're going to be bombarded with a responsibility and being overwhelmed and stuff like that. So we're going to be talking a lot about how you can deal with that, but also how you can integrate the ideology of happiness and increasing things like employee engagement and stuff like that. Now, it doesn't matter if you're a small business or if you're a large business. It doesn't matter, because a lot of the things that we're going to be talking about is very, very, very coincide and relevant to our conversations. Now, before we get started, ladies and gents, as I like to say to everyone, if you're listening to us live, use the hashtag live, use the hashtag replay. You can do that here. And if you're listening to us on LinkedIn or on YouTube, make sure you follow me or subscribe, me and Rachael, by the way, on our channels. And also make sure you click on that bell notification in the top right-hand corner. And that way, when we publish content, you'll be able to get notified so you don't miss out on those opportunities as well. So, and the last but not least, if you have any questions or comments or whatever it is, PLC, post, like, comment, and tag anyone that you feel would highly benefit from today's conversations. Really super important. So anyway, listen, enough babbling from me. We're going to bring on the star of today's show, Rachael Clarke. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much, Adam. You create such a valuable space here. I know, as you said in your introduction, we've not known each other very long, but it has been wonderful to get to know you and to see the work that you do, and the space that you create here is really, really special. So it's a pleasure to be on your podcast. Thank you for inviting me.
Appreciate that. It's a wonderful compliment. And it's interesting how I know that you and David have known each other for quite a number of years, and how did that kind of coincide? Remind me in the audience how you guys met. It was I know it's kind of like an existing relationship for many years, right?
Absolutely. I'm trying to think now. So probably, I think 2019 was probably the first time that I met David, and he was working with Tony Robbins and Dean Graziosi at that time. And yeah, he was running the Knowledge Broker Blueprint was what the program was called at the time, and that's where we met. We absolutely hit it off, and yeah, kind of been working together ever since.
Absolutely. So today's theme is all around happiness and stuff. One of the comments that I made when we first met, right, is, I'm really big into energy, and I can really pick up your vibe, if you like, your energy or whatever you want to call it, right? And you always have a smile on your face. I mean, I know that you're human, like, but how do you, like, from your perspective, how do you define happiness? Like, what is the theme of happiness? How do you get into a state of happiness? And
Mm.
why bother? Like, what's the benefit of that? I know there's a lot of negativity out there, but why bother?
Yeah, absolutely. And some people, they do look at me sometimes and they're kind of like, "Are you for real? Is like this? Is this really what you're like?" And absolutely, like life happens to me too. So I just,
Right.
I absolutely choose to carry that, that smile with me. And I think it's so important. And you asked me in terms of defining what happiness is, and I think it depends. It really depends on you and you as an individual. I do think there are some things that are consistent with most people that I meet, and that is that I think when we feel that that we are making progress towards things that we think are really important, whether that be our relationships, often things that are bigger than ourselves, to be honest. I think that's a key theme that comes across for me. And I think I really discovered this path probably about 8 years ago, when I hit a bit of wall in my corporate career, and really started to think, what was I here on this planet to do? And I am so grateful that in terms of the work that I do now, I would describe as my soul's contract, and having that level of kind of purpose. And I think that really, really, really helps. So working towards that. And then you asked me about kind of why does happiness matter?
Mm,
Well, we have this choice, don't we, in terms of
mm,
in terms of how we live each and every day. And the reason that it matters, or the reason that our emotions matter, our moods and emotions matter, is because how can we actually show up and be the parents we want to be, the leaders that
mm,
we want to be, the friends that we want to be, the family members that we want to be, if our moods and emotions are all dysregulated? Actually, it's very, very difficult to show up and be the best version of ourselves that we really most
mm,
want to be, and to make that progress. And as I say, that progress has an aliveness, and when we're working towards that, I think that's the thing that is truly fulfilling. I know that you yourself, you started to do your adventure run, and your training, and you're doing that, and you wanting to test yourself, can I still do it? And knowing that you're progressing towards that, I'm sure you feel that, you get a sense of that yourself.
I think for me is kind of like, I spoke about this the other day. It's kind of intrinsic motivation, right? It's like, it's not the external factors that affect my motivational levels. It makes me happy in abundance, gives me purpose, knowing that, if I can fulfill my destiny internally, right, that's gonna take me to a whole new level. Does that make sense? And I'll probably raise money for charity, most likely, as well. And again, it gives you a sense of purpose. It gives you a sense of increasing the level of happiness, I suppose. But yeah,
One of
definitely.
my one of my kind of favorite sayings, I guess, the one that I pretty much live by, is that if we're not growing, we're dying or we're dead. And but it's also, what are we growing, what are we growing for? As we grow as individuals, we can become more, which means that we can contribute more, we can give more.
Yep, I agree.
Now my screen's gone blank. You're back. That was very strange.
That's all good.
My whole screen just went blank then for a second. I was like, what's going on? Are we still here? We're here. I thought I'd had a power cut.
It's all good. It's all good. I know that we've got we've got listeners in over 58 countries worldwide, and people are at different places. Like if they, running a small business, you run leadership or whatever it might be. From your perspective, especially with doing so much training that you've done and consulting, whatever it is, why is happiness so important for leadership? Why should we embrace that? I'd love to know what your thoughts are about that.
Yeah, well, if we think about our moods and emotions, they will drive the behaviors and the actions that we take, and those behaviors and actions will impact the results that we get. So kind of actually, that's the reason why it's so important, because if you want good results, whether it's with your people or for your organization, you want to make good decisions, then actually making sure that those moods and emotions are as fully restored and regulated as they can be is going to be really, really, really important. So yeah, I guess that's the reason why. And if we think about it, we all know that, and they've done studies on this as well. If you get somebody come to you and you've had a poor night's sleep, or you've not eaten and you're hungry or something like that, your response might be very different to if you were fully restored. And it's remembering when it comes to our leadership as well, some of the most basic things, and they are things that we all instinctively know, but I think it's harder for us to put into practice. Our biology absolutely affects us emotionally, and so things like sleep and nutrition and drinking enough water and spending time with people that you love, all of these things are so critically important. And yet I meet leaders all over the place that are under restored in some of these areas, that have picked up bad habits potentially in some of these areas, and therefore their behavior and their performance is not necessarily where they would want it to be.
Interesting. Yeah. But also, I mean, you would have heard this before as well. They say that happiness is a state of mind. So working with, you work with a lot of leaders, whether corporate or otherwise. What have you found in working with leaders that have maybe a more of a pessimistic mindset, which means they're not such a happier person, compared to people that are more happier? What have you found in terms of leadership qualities and differences between the two, not just the types of mindsets, but in terms of their being and their personality? Have you found any differences between the two?
Yeah, and I think it's important here, isn't it, as we talk about happiness, that we're not talking about seeing the world through rose-tinted glasses and pretending that there aren't issues or there aren't things that we absolutely need to address.
Right.
It's really important that we do have that critical eye as leaders, and we do face into those challenges. And I think it's recognizing, just in terms of how we do it, and it's looking at things like where our focus is. Is our focus always on the problem and the issue, or is it on actually what we want to solve and where we want to go? And it's getting that sort of healthy balance. And I suppose this is one of the things, those leaders that are very pessimistic, you might find that some of their the majority of their time is perhaps focused on what's wrong, what they don't like, instead of being much more solution focused. And that's really what we're talking about here. We're talking about a resourcefulness that comes from more empowering emotions, which we can, to a degree, direct, as I've already mentioned. Kind of our biology impacts this in a big way. So that's really important. And it's about being able to recognize where each and every one of us are with that, and it changes and it fluctuates. And then, of course, you've got more of the emotional side of things, and that might be a stimulus. Something might happen that's that triggers an emotional response, and being able to put that kind of being able to recognize the space between the stimulus and the response, that gap in the middle, that's where all your freedom to choose lies. And for me, the most powerful leaders, and we didn't say this off the top, but this is something I truly, genuinely believe in. Of course, there's all sorts of different leadership and different leadership styles, and different leadership styles will work very well in different scenarios. But the one type of leadership style that I think is really enduring and lasting is a servant-based type of leadership, where we're really showing up to serve, whether it's our stakeholders, our organization, our team, absolutely our customers. So it's that type of leadership for me that endures. And where we and in order to do that, and to do that really, really well, then you have to be accessing these much more resourceful moods and emotions.
Love that. It sounds really simple. You talk about it in sort of simplified layman's terms, but it isn't in practicality. Some people might be listening thinking, hey, this sounds really good, but
how do I do it? How do I do it?
Exactly. How do you shift it? Do you know what I'm saying?
Right. Well, let's talk about that. Should we talk about that? Because I'd love to share that. Yeah. Okay. So, because actually one of the things I'm so passionate about is people being able to, kind of take this stuff and practically apply it in their lives. So if we just talk for a moment just around the biology side of things, that's about creating some really good habits around your sleep, around your self-care, around your own boundaries as well. Now, I'm a work in progress on this too, right? We all are. And sleep is still a big one for me that I still get challenged with. I'm tempted sometimes to stay up late and to continue to work. But, one of the things I've done recently is I've made sure I've got I monitor my sleep now. So I record it. So the same way you might do for your, for your sport, for your fitness, for that type, I'm recording my sleep. So, and it's not just about how long you spend in bed, but it's about the regularity of your sleep as well, so that you're going to bed and you're getting up at a regular time each day. And I talk about sleep first because sleep is the foundation, that so much, everything else can come from this. Like, I'm sure we've both got kids, and we've had those nights where, they've they've kept you up. My kids are not that old, so it's not that long ago for me. I can remember when I was up in the night. So sleep is absolutely critical. So looking at things like going to bed at the same time, waking up at a similar time. I'm going to sound really boring now, even at the weekends, and I'm not saying don't live. Of course, I'm not saying don't live. And, and we all have various things, like you're traveling. I know you're going to be traveling like next week. We all have these things in our schedule that can challenge this. But as much as we can, kind of keeping that regularity and getting a decent number of hours sleep, and that varies between individuals, but typically sort of 7 to 8 hours a night would be really important. And then it's how are we nourishing ourselves? And and the nourishment not only comes from the foods that we eat. Oh my gosh, Adam, you'll know so much about this in terms of your background and everything that you've done. But I often encourage people, if I was maybe to give one piece of advice, it would be, I'd encourage you, before you reach to put something in your mouth, ask, is this nourishing me? Does this nourish me? Is this cleansing me, or is this clogging me? And ask that question, and put only the things in that are cleansing and that are nourishing to you, because sometimes it's late at night, we've had a busy week, and actually we feel like we want to go and reach into the fridge or the cupboard for something, and actually just taking that moment and going, actually, what do I really need to nourish myself right now? It might not be that snack that you were planning on going for. It might actually be to go and have a cuddle with your other half, and maybe go to bed. So, I think, again, just sort of looking at, some pieces that people could take away, definitely to ask yourself that type of question. And again, it's looking at daylight. Daylight's a really important one, a one that we so often forget. But getting out, getting daylight, we forget that we are creatures. We are human. We are creatures. We are human beings. We need daylight. We need that fresh air. We need the movement. So often now, I'm stood talking to you while we're doing this, because so often otherwise we will just sit at our desks for long periods of time. So, getting up and moving wherever you can, getting fresh air, getting daylight, getting exercise, which is, I know, something that, you're big into anyway, is also so important. And remember those nurturing relationships as well, because as human beings, we also need connection and connection with others. So when was the last time you actually truly connected with people that you really, really cared about? Because that's also very, very, very important. So they would be some kind of base kind of things. But then what happens when you feel like a stimulus comes along? Somebody lets you down, something goes on at work. Actually, what can we do in that scenario to kind of help ourselves practically when it comes to our emotions? You can feel it's almost like this trigger. Those emotions are going, what can you do? Well, there's kind of 4 things that I would, kind of get you to consider. The first would be what you decide that event means. So this comes from a great book by Viktor Frankl. For those of you, people in your audience may well have read his book, but it's called Man's Search for Meaning. And it's quite a harrowing book to read. He was involved in the Holocaust. He was in Nazi concentration camps. But, he talks about what he observed about how some people were able to better cope and survive in those conditions versus others. And ultimately, it kind of all comes down to the meaning that people had attached to their imprisonment and what they were seeing and what was, and what was going on. And it's this recognition that whenever something happens to us, that we do get the opportunity to choose what it means. So it's a real wet, miserable day today outside here in the UK, and I could choose that means, that it's my hair goes frizzy, that I'm not getting outside with the boys in the sunshine, which I would love to do, and actually, therefore, I feel a bit miserable. Or I could choose that it means that it's great that we've got this rain, and that's going to be, it's going to be really good for the garden, and it means I'm going to stay in and get some jobs done inside that I've been putting off. We get the opportunity to choose, and even more, even more difficult situations and things that happen to us as well. There's a dear friend of mine, that I know, who served in the war in Afghanistan and Iraq, and he lost all of his legs and all of his arms. And as you can imagine, to start with, when he survived, and when he woke up, and the first meaning that he put to this was that his life was over. He had a wife and he had a young girl, but his life was over. How could he do what he needed to do to look after them? And he honestly felt suicidal. And then actually his little girl was lying on his chest as if like nothing was different. And all of a sudden he was like, hang on a minute, this isn't some kind of punishment that I'm still here. This is a gift that I'm here. He changed the meaning. That was all it was. He just changed the meaning. And by changing that meaning, all of a sudden, he was like, I'm going to be the dad I need to be. I'm going to be the husband I need to be. And, he basically kind of got himself back into doing what he needed to do for him and his family. So meanings are so powerful, and we do get the opportunity to choose them. So is that person trying to disrespect you, or is this an opportunity for you to have a conversation with that individual, and either they're going to pull their socks up or things are going to get themselves sorted out one way or another. One way leaves you feeling more resourceful and optimistic and empowered than the other. So that's the first one. That's the, so it's the meanings that we attach to events. And the other three, just very, very quickly. One is our physiology. So we have a choice as to how to move our body. And yes, our facial muscles count. You said to me, and the way you introduced me to your guest was lovely, by the way, like, oh, she has this energy. She's always smiling. Well, I practice what I preach. We have all of these facial muscles. We get to use them how we want to use them, and how we move affects how we feel. Because I'm sure, like, you must have experienced at some point going for, feeling miserable and going for a run or a bike ride or a swim, or even somebody just making you laugh, and that change in your physiology changed how you felt. So, we often forget this. And even one of the things I work a lot with leaders on is around their confidence as well. And, just thinking about, well, actually, what would that more confident body posture be like? Because sometimes that shift in our physiology is only a very small shift. I mean, if you want to change how you feel radically, then I encourage you to radically change, kind of your physiology. But that's the first of these other three. So your physiology, remembering about how you use your body, because that will affect how you feel. The second one is your focus, because where focus goes, energy flows, right? We all know that. So are you choosing to focus on what's right or what's wrong, what you're afraid of, or where you want to go? We have a choice with our focus. And so, kind of being really mindful about where that focus is going to impact how you feel. And one of the quickest ways to shift your focus is with the third thing I was going to share, which is your language, and in particular, the questions that we ask ourselves. So that's the third and final one, our language, and of course then what it ultimately means, which is where I started this whole thing. So often people will ask questions, and we don't even realize it in our own heads, like, why does this always happen to me? Or, am I good enough? Or, there's so many questions, and that we unintentionally, unconsciously ask ourselves. We'll repeat these questions over and over and over again in our heads. And the issue with the question is, if I ask you right now, Adam, what color is your mobile phone?
What is it? Oh yeah, purple. That's right.
What happened when I asked you that question? For that split second that I asked you that question, what happened to your brain? What did you have to do? What happened to your thoughts?
I had to remember.
Absolutely. So questions hijack your brain. And the problem is that we're asking ourselves unconsciously questions all the time. And you're hijacking your own brain when you do it. And the questions that you ask yourself will direct your focus. So if you want to change your focus, ask yourself a better question. And that will absolutely, so instead of, am I good enough? Like, how can I be even more guided by this? Or,
right.
What do I want to do now, given where I'm at? What's the outcome that I'm committed to? If you've got a problem, actually, what could be great about this? Now, I know the brain typically kind of comes in and goes, nothing, because it does that. So you have to talk to yourself. And like, I kid you not, in terms of the way that we talk to ourselves, you have to talk to yourself with a bit more of a firm, directive voice. Like, I know you're saying nothing. I need an answer. What could be really good about this? What is good about this problem? How can I, what's the outcome that I'm committed to? And how can I solve this problem and have fun in the process of doing it? I love that question. I use that question all the time myself. Like, often there's a piece of work, there's something I'm looking at doing, I'm like, oh, I'm a little bit like stuck in the rut with this one.
It's like you're questioning your subconscious, aren't you? You're challenging your inner critic. That's what you're describing, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And even sometimes, it might not even seem like that inner critic necessarily. because the questions come all the time. I think, the thing for me is about actually how can we build awareness of those questions. So just noticing what are the questions in your thoughts, in your own head, and what would be a better question to ask, a question that could help you where you want to go. And it often starts with things like, what do I really, really want? What am I really, really committed to? Why do I want it? We know the power of why. Like, actually, that's so important. Why do I want this? What's it going to give me? What pain or discomfort is it going to stop? Who can help would be another good question.
Love it.
Yeah.
Some good stuff
Before
there.
you even get to how am I going to get there? Before you even get to the how. Because so often we jump to the how am I going to do this?
Right. Love it. It's interesting. One other thing that came to my mind, because I know that we're kind of coming towards the end, was I know that some leaders are very short-minded sometimes. So they're so focused on performance. So based on like sales, marketing, leads, they're focused on the financial aspect of stuff and overlooking the whole kind of because happiness in a way for me, happiness and leadership, where they coincide really, really well. They really overlook the benefits. Is that what you find, especially when you're having conversations with a lot of leaders where they have maybe that mindset of not kind of looking at the bigger picture? What's your thoughts on that?
So just to clarify your question there, Adam, is that around whether leaders do overlook the importance of happiness? Is that that your question? Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think it depends. I think a lot of the leaders that I end up working with, and I guess a lot of the people that are energetically attracted, to working with me as well, they do value that. The challenge for them is that it is how do they create that? How do they create that not only in their own lives, but then how do they create that with their team? And so, that is where I would lean in and, and kind of work with either the team, the leadership team, or individuals kind of on that basis.
Love it. Well, listen, I know that we're kind of coming to the end of our conversation, but this whole kind of happiness thing really fascinates me and how you're applying it in the business world. I'd love to know more about like what is it that you're working on right now, not only to improve happiness and whatever it might be, but what are you working on right now? I mean, the audience would love to know.
Oh, yeah. So, just some interesting things. So I'm running a big online event for an organization in a couple of weeks' time. Really excited about that. That's all about driving engagement for learning, development, and growth, which, given what I've said to you, is just like such a happy humming place for me, to be able to do that and to be able to speak to, a huge audience on that basis. I'm also working with organizations in terms of looking at changing cultures as well. So, that's coming back to, actually there's been some tough times, and helping people to move beyond that and create and design a new future and what that looks like, both for individuals and also collectively for them as a team. And and just continuing to I support people one-on-one as well. So yeah, just lots of all that good stuff.
Love it. Well, listen, today's conversation has been super awesome. For you guys that have been listening in, if you have any questions for me or Rachel, feel free to use the chat function below. Again, as I mentioned to you at the very beginning, if you haven't subscribed to me or Rachel on LinkedIn and YouTube, do so right now. And make sure you click on the bell notification, because that way, when we publish content, you won't miss out. So, Rachel, I just want to say thank you so much for being on the show today. It's been a wonders.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. And I know we love questions, don't we? So genuinely, I am just another human being. So if there is anything, please do reach out.
100%. Well, listen, guys, hope you've enjoyed today's show. If you have, fantastic. Hopefully, we'll see you again on the next Game Changers experience. From me and Rachel, take care, and we'll see you soon. Cheers.